The Western Mediterranean region has recently seen an increase in diplomatic and economic standoffs between Morocco, Algeria, and Spain. In 2021, Algiers severed its already strained ties with Rabat and halted gas exports via the Maghreb-Europe pipeline, which runs through Morocco. Algeria has recently launched a number of diplomatic protests against Spain, as well as frozen some of its trade relations. It has also stated that it no longer regards Madrid as a trustworthy political and economic partner. The disputed territory of Western Sahara, a 266,000 square kilometers country slightly larger than the entire United Kingdom, is at the heart of these tensions. It is located along Africa's Atlantic coast, primarily between Mauritania and Morocco, across from Spain's Canary Islands. For a long time, the Western Sahara conflict was thought to be dormant. However, it resurfaced in late 2020 when the Algerian-backed Sahrawi nationalist movement, the Frente Polisario Front, resumed armed struggle. Since 1991, the front demanding independent statehood has abided by a United Nations ceasefire. Since 1975, Morocco has illegally occupied Western Sahara with the tacit approval of Europe and the United States. It has control over roughly three-quarters of the territory, including its major cities and economic resources. The two most important are fishing and phosphate rock. Morocco has also encouraged mass migration of its own citizens, who now more than likely outnumber native Sahrawis in the territory. Since the 1950s, Rabat has claimed historical ownership of Western Sahara. However, the territory's right to independence is protected by UN decolonization law. In a landmark 1975 decision, the International Court of Justice found the justices unconvinced that the territory belonged to anyone other than the native Sahrawi people. In 1885, Spain took control of the territory for the first time. Subsequent UN opinions and European Union Court of Justice rulings have upheld Western Sahara's right to independence. Western Sahara remains on the UN list of non-self-governing territories. However, it is the only one without a clearly defined administering power. Western Sahara matters because of the legal principles at stake. Morocco's territorial expansion by force is one of these. Another issue is the right of non-self-governing territories, such as Western Sahara, to select their sovereign status. For a long time, experts have warned that the North Atlantic powers' unwillingness to put pressure on Morocco to resolve the conflict would inevitably lead to a more complicated and entangled set of crises. This is now a reality. Failure to resolve the issue is affecting security and trade relations throughout the Western Mediterranean. Morocco declared its intention to take the territory by force in October 1975, knowing that Spain intended to grant Western Sahara independence. It launched a covert military invasion to accomplish this. During the subsequent chaos of the transition from Spanish to Moroccan-Mauritanian rule, nearly 40% of the Sahrawi population fled to neighboring Algeria. Over 170,000 people are still living in these refugee camps today. The 1975 to 1991 war between Morocco and Polisario was heavily influenced by the Cold War. Rabat has also received significant support from the United States, France, and Saudi Arabia. The Western Saharan nationalist movement, for its part, received strong backing from Algeria and other influential non-aligned movement members. With this assistance, Polisario was able to quickly evict Mauritania from the territory. Nonetheless, Moroccan forces were able to establish themselves behind a heavily mined 2,700 km barrier that still bisects the territory today. By the time the UN was able to broker a ceasefire in the early 1990s, dozens of countries, including the African Union, had recognized Western Sahara as its own state. In 1991, the United Nations Mission for the Referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, was established. It sought to poll the indigenous Sahrawi population on whether to join Morocco or form an independent state. Despite its elegance, Morocco and Polisario had diametrically opposed views on how the UN should go about identifying Sahrawi electorates for the vote. These criteria were eventually codified in the Houston Accords of 1997, which were negotiated by former U.S. Secretary of State James Baker. Two critical developments derailed the UN referendum effort just as MINURSO was finalizing the provisional voter list. Moroccan King Hassan II died in the summer of 1999, leaving his kingdom to a young and inexperienced Mohammed VI. Then, in East Timor, a similar UN referendum effort resulted in a violent rampage by Indonesian security forces when Timorese voted for independence. Morocco's Security Council allies, primarily France and the United States, recognized that the referendum in Western Sahara was heading in the same direction. The occupying power would refuse to recognize independence if the people voted for it. Since 2000, the Security Council has urged Morocco and Polisario to reach a more comprehensive political agreement. The Security Council desired a deal that would recognize Western Sahara's legal right to self-determination. This turned out to be a fool's errand. Morocco's policy under Mohammed VI has shifted to vehemently opposing any process or proposal that could lead to an independent Western Sahara. Instead, Morocco has proposed granting Western Sahara limited self-government under Moroccan control. When Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez backed Morocco's proposal in 2022, new tensions were added to the mix. The approval marked a significant shift in Madrid's policy toward Western Sahara, its former colony, which had previously been officially neutral on the issue of final status. The statement was the catalyst for the recent breakdown in Algerian-Spanish relations. Donald Trump had taken an even more extreme stance. In his final days in office, in late 2020, the former U.S. president acknowledged Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara. No other power in the North Atlantic has done so. Polisario continues to demand a final status vote with an independence option, citing international law. With the United Nations Security Council constantly focused on more pressing crises, the Western Sahara issue has faded, barely keeping the comatose peace process alive. In July 2022, the fifth in a series of UN envoys attempted to visit Moroccan-occupied Western Sahara for the first time, only to be denied entry by Rabat. Thus, recent developments between Morocco, Spain, and Algeria should be interpreted as Algiers adopting a more aggressive posture to defend its strategic interests in Western Sahara. Algeria's policy shift is all the more remarkable given the country's long-standing refusal to mix politics, Western Sahara, and economics, oil. The global energy crisis caused by the war in Ukraine appears to be strengthening its position, as Algeria is Africa's largest gas exporter. The question is whether Madrid, Paris, Brussels, and Washington have received the message. Thanks for watching. If you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories.